It's supposed to be one of the happiest moments in a woman's life, the moment she discovers she's expecting. Yet for Kelly, her routine checkup would turn into a discovery that would shake her entire world. What should have been a peaceful visit to her doctor, a simple ultrasound to confirm the pregnancy, quickly spiraled into a mystery she could never have predicted. Imagine being in her shoes, sitting there, full of excitement and anticipation, only for the doctor to give you a look you've never seen before. The kind of look that makes your heart race and sends chills down your spine. You think it's just the usual nerves, but something is wrong, something's off. The doctor pauses and looks at you for a second too long before delivering news that stops you cold. Your excitement melts into confusion, and before you know it, everything you thought you knew is flipped upside down. I know you're wondering what could be so shocking about a routine pregnancy checkup. But trust me, you're about to find out in a way you never saw coming. If you think you know where this is going, hold on tight, because this story isn't just about a pregnancy. It's about secrets, deception, and a hidden truth that will unravel everything Kelly thought she knew about herself, her family, and the father of her child. The mystery begins when Kelly learns something that completely alters the course of her life. Her baby's father isn't who she thought he was. In fact, the person she believed to be the father is not the father at all. The shock is so overwhelming that it leaves her in complete disbelief. How could this happen? Was there a mix-up at the clinic? Or was someone hiding something much bigger? And most importantly, who is the real father of her child? I know you want answers. You're dying to know just as much as Kelly is. So stay with me, because this isn't just a story about a hidden identity. It's about unraveling the web of lies that's been carefully constructed around Kelly's life. You'll find out how far people are willing to go to hide the truth, and what happens when the truth inevitably comes to light. What happens when everything you thought was real turns out to be a lie? What do you do when the people closest to you are not who you believe them to be? I want you to imagine yourself in Kelly's place for a moment. You go into your appointment thinking everything's fine, but the moment the doctor says those fateful words, you can feel the ground beneath you start to shift. You've been told one story your whole life, and now, suddenly, none of it makes sense. The father you thought you knew is now a stranger, and the identity of your child's real father is a puzzle you need to solve before it's too late. But that's not the end of the mystery. No, it's only the beginning. Because what Kelly uncovers over the next few weeks is far more complicated than she could ever imagine. As she begins her search for answers, she is faced with betrayals, lies, and people who will go to great lengths to protect the truth from coming out. Who is behind this deception, and why did they hide the identity of the baby's father in the first place? What could possibly be the motive for keeping such a life-altering secret? And as Kelly digs deeper, she'll find herself in a dangerous game of cat and mouse, where everyone has something to hide. As you keep watching, you'll begin to piece together the puzzle, but here's where I need you to stay with me. This is no ordinary story. It's a tale of love, betrayal, family secrets, and the lengths we go to in order to protect the people we care about. Each twist and turn will leave you more hooked, more desperate for the next revelation. And just when you think you've figured it all out, the truth takes another unexpected turn, leaving you on the edge of your seat, craving more. So, who is the real father? What was the motive behind hiding this from Kelly? And how will she cope with the truth when it finally comes to light? The answers you're seeking are just around the corner, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single second. Stick with me until the very end, because the last part of this story will shock you to your core. You might think you know what's coming, but I promise you, this mystery will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and family. Get ready, because the real story is about to begin, and it's one you'll never forget. As Kelly sat there in the sterile, quiet room of the doctor's office, trying to process the words that had just shattered everything she thought she knew, she couldn't help but think back to the months leading up to this moment. Her life had been anything but calm. It was a whirlwind of changes, some expected, others completely out of the blue. Just a few months ago, she had been living a peaceful, predictable life. She was engaged to Tom, a kind, dependable man who worked as an architect. They had been together for 3 years, and their future seemed set. They had already started planning the wedding, with everything from the venue to the guest list already in the works. They were ready to begin the next chapter of their lives, together. So when Kelly found out she was pregnant, it was the news they had both been waiting for. It should have been the perfect start to their happily ever after. But that was before the truth started to unravel, before the mysteries began to surface. Kelly had always thought Tom was the perfect partner, supportive, loving, and everything she could ever ask for in a father for her child. They shared a home, friends, and a life together, so when she found out she was pregnant, it didn't take long for them to start talking about names and preparing for their baby's arrival. But even with all the love and support from Tom, Kelly couldn't shake an unsettling feeling that had been lingering in the back of her mind for weeks. There were small things that seemed off. Tom had become more distant lately, working late, canceling plans, and even avoiding conversations about their future together. At first, she chalked it up to stress, work, wedding planning, and the growing responsibility of becoming parents. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday evening, and Kelly had planned a quiet dinner at home. Tom was supposed to be back from work early, but as the hours dragged on, she began to grow concerned. She tried calling him, but there was no answer. After a couple of missed calls, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She grabbed her coat and headed to his office to see if he was still there. When she arrived, his car was parked in the lot, but the office lights were off. A small flicker of doubt crossed her mind as she stood there, staring at the building in front of her. She could have gone inside and checked, but something told her not to. Instead, she just drove home, unsure of what she would have found if she'd gone any further. The feeling gnawed at her, growing more persistent as the days passed. The next morning, Kelly found something that confirmed her worst fears. As she was tidying up their bedroom, she stumbled upon a small, crumpled piece of paper under Tom's pillow, an envelope with no return address. It was a note, hastily written, and when Kelly opened it, her breath caught in her throat. The words weren't what she expected. "I need more time. I'm not ready for this." The note was signed by Tom, but there was something about it that didn't feel right. It wasn't just the words, but the tone. It felt distant, cold, as though he was talking to someone he didn't know. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of it. Why would he write this, and why would he leave it under his pillow like that? The rest of the day passed in a haze. Kelly tried to reach Tom again, but his phone was still off. She was left alone with her thoughts, piecing together every interaction, every little thing that had seemed off about Tom recently. He had been pulling away from her, avoiding intimate conversations, and even his physical presence seemed more distant. Was he hiding something? But what? She couldn't make sense of it, not yet. She didn't want to believe the worst, but the evidence seemed to be piling up. When she went for her checkup, she thought maybe it was all in her head. Maybe she was just overthinking things. After all, they had been through a lot lately. But as soon as the ultrasound technician paused, her doubts turned into fear. The doctor's expression was unreadable, but it was clear something wasn't right. She'd expected to see a healthy baby with a strong heartbeat, but instead, she saw something entirely different. The technician turned the screen toward her, pointing at a section of the image Kelly hadn't even noticed. The baby's heart was beating strong, but there was something else. A second faint heartbeat, a shadow in the corner of the scan. Something that shouldn't have been there. That's when the doctor spoke, her words steady, but loaded with an underlying tension. "Kelly," she said softly, "there's something we need to talk about. You're not just carrying one child. There's a second baby in there. And more importantly, the DNA test we ran shows your baby's father isn't who you think he is." Kelly's world turned upside down in that moment. The man she loved, the man she was building a future with, the man she had believed was the father of her child, was not the father at all. The shock and confusion were overwhelming. How was this possible? Who was the real father? Was this some kind of mistake? Or had someone been hiding a much darker truth? As Kelly grappled with this new reality, she found herself surrounded by people who, on the surface, seemed innocent enough. Tom, her fiancé, who she thought she knew better than anyone. But now, the cracks in their relationship seemed bigger than ever. And there was Jenna, her best friend, who had always been by her side, but lately had been acting strangely. It wasn't just the odd looks or the vague comments. There were moments when Kelly caught her in quiet conversations with Tom, where they seemed to share some unspoken understanding. It was enough to make Kelly wonder if there was something more to their relationship than just friendship. And then there was Brandon, Tom's coworker, someone who had always been friendly and supportive, but someone Kelly had never trusted completely. He'd always been a little too interested in her life, a little too eager to offer advice. Was he somehow involved? Could he be the father? Or was he hiding something deeper, something that would change everything? With each passing day, the mystery grew more tangled. Kelly's search for answers led her down a dangerous path, filled with people who seemed willing to do anything to protect their secrets. And as she dug deeper into Tom's past, she realized that nothing was as it seemed. Who could she trust? What if the people closest to her weren't just hiding the truth? They were actively trying to bury it. The tension was palpable, and as Kelly began to connect the dots, she found herself on the edge of a discovery that would change her life forever. But just as she thought she was getting closer to the truth, she stumbled upon a new piece of information, a detail so startling, so unbelievable, that it left her questioning everything she thought she knew. Was she even ready to know the truth? And if she uncovered it, would it destroy her completely? The answers were within reach, but the closer Kelly got, the more dangerous the situation became. And with every step, the walls seemed to close in around her, forcing her to make impossible choices. Would she find the truth, or would the truth find her first? As Kelly's determination to uncover the truth grew, so did the obstacles she faced. Every step forward seemed to be met with resistance, hidden hands pulling the strings behind the scenes, making it harder for her to get any closer to the answers she desperately needed. At first, she believed it was simply a matter of time before the mystery unraveled on its own. After all, how hard could it be to piece together the truth? But soon, she realized just how wrong she was. The first major setback came when Kelly tried to get her hands on the DNA results, the concrete proof that could reveal who the real father of her child was. She had arranged to meet with the clinic where the test was conducted, hoping to see the full report for herself. When she arrived at the clinic, her stomach churned with anxiety, but she knew it was time to face whatever came next. However, when she requested the results, the receptionist's response was nothing short of alarming. The report had mysteriously disappeared. She was told that all files for the day were intact, but somehow, her file had vanished from the system. It was as if someone had intentionally erased it, making it impossible for Kelly to get the proof she needed. The receptionist seemed genuinely confused, but Kelly could see the subtle shift in her demeanor, the way she hesitated, the way her eyes darted nervously to the side as she apologized profusely. It didn't feel like an innocent mistake. It felt like something or someone had been covering their tracks. But who? With no DNA results in hand, Kelly was left with nothing but her suspicions, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger by the day. She tried to reach out to the doctor who had conducted her ultrasound, but when she called the office, the receptionist gave her the coldest response yet. "Dr. Henderson is no longer available for consultation," she said flatly. No explanation, no further details. Just a door slammed shut. It was becoming clear that the closer Kelly got to the truth, the more people seemed to be closing ranks around her, protecting whatever dark secret they were hiding. Frustration began to settle in. Kelly felt like she was running in circles, chasing shadows, with no one willing to help her. Even Tom's behavior became more erratic. Whenever she tried to bring up the situation, he would shut down, becoming defensive, or worse, angry. It was as if he had something to hide, something that he didn't want her to uncover. The man she had once trusted with her heart and future was now a stranger, and it seemed like every time she tried to peel back the layers, more lies were revealed. But it wasn't just Tom who was acting suspicious. Jenna, her best friend, who had always been her sounding board, her rock during tough times, began to act strangely too. It started with small things, dodging Kelly's calls, making vague excuses for why she couldn't meet up. At first, Kelly thought maybe Jenna was just busy. But when she finally got the chance to sit down with her, she noticed something unsettling. Jenna seemed nervous, almost guilty. She kept shifting in her seat, avoiding eye contact, and when Kelly mentioned Tom's name, Jenna's face seemed to twitch, like she was hiding something. Kelly decided to push, to ask Jenna outright if she knew anything about what was going on. It was then that Jenna said something that sent a cold shiver down Kelly's spine. "Maybe you should just stop digging, Kel. Some things are better left alone." The words hung in the air like a warning, but Kelly couldn't understand why Jenna would say that, why her closest friend would try to keep her from finding out the truth. Was Jenna protecting someone? Or was she part of the conspiracy? Kelly didn't know what to think, but the seed of doubt was planted, and she could no longer trust anyone around her. And then, just when things couldn't seem more impossible, Kelly received an unexpected visit from someone she hadn't seen in years, her old college roommate, Emily. Kelly hadn't heard from Emily since graduation, and while they'd kept in touch through social media, they hadn't spoken in person in almost 5 years. Emily showed up at Kelly's door unannounced, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She explained that she had heard about Kelly's pregnancy and the situation with Tom, and she was concerned. At first, Kelly was happy to see her old friend, but as they talked, something felt off. Emily was unusually fixated on the details of Kelly's investigation, constantly asking questions, probing in ways that felt too intimate, too personal. It wasn't the kind of casual catch-up Kelly expected from a friend she hadn't seen in years. As the conversation wore on, Emily casually dropped a bombshell. "You know," she said with a small, knowing smile, "Tom's always had a secret, Kel. Something he's never told you. Something he's been hiding for a long time." Kelly's heart skipped a beat. What was Emily talking about? What secret? Before Kelly could ask any more questions, Emily quickly changed the subject, brushing off her comment with a nervous laugh. But the damage was done. Now Kelly couldn't stop thinking about it. What did Emily know? And why had she dropped that cryptic line just when things were starting to feel impossible? The next day, as Kelly tried to process everything, her lost DNA results, her friend's suspicious behavior, and Emily's strange visit, she received another shocking phone call. This time, it was from the detective she had quietly hired to dig into Tom's past. His voice was urgent, almost breathless. "Kelly, you need to be careful. I've found something big, but I can't get any closer without raising some serious alarms. There's a history here that goes back further than you realize." The detective didn't elaborate, but his warning was clear. Someone was watching her, someone who didn't want her to dig any deeper. With the walls closing in around her, Kelly found herself at a crossroads. The pieces were all there, scattered fragments of a puzzle she was desperate to solve. But no matter how hard she tried, they wouldn't fit together. People she thought she could trust were pulling away, her efforts to gather evidence were being sabotaged, and every step forward only seemed to lead to more questions, more obstacles, and more secrets. Just as she thought she might be able to put it all together, she discovered something so unexpected, so jarring, that it left her frozen in place. It was a single photograph, one she had never seen before, of Tom, taken years ago, in the company of someone Kelly had never met. The date on the photo was years before she and Tom had ever met, but the real shock came when Kelly recognized the other person in the photo, the man standing next to Tom, smiling as if they were old friends. It was the last person she ever expected to see. What did this photo mean? How was this person connected to Tom and to the baby? Kelly had no answers, but now she had one more puzzle piece, one that might finally unlock the truth. But as she stared at the photo, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was in even deeper than before. Someone was watching her. Someone didn't want her to uncover the secrets buried so deep beneath the surface. And with each passing moment, the stakes were getting higher. Was she ready for what came next? Could she handle the truth, or would it tear her world apart? Kelly had no choice but to keep moving forward, but one thing was certain. The deeper she dug, the more dangerous this investigation became. The truth was closer than ever, but so was the darkness that surrounded it. Just as Kelly felt herself inching closer to a truth that could shatter her world, the weight of the situation only seemed to grow heavier. The photo of Tom with the mysterious man, the one Kelly never expected to see, lingered in her mind, spinning a web of questions with no answers. It felt like the pieces were beginning to align, yet every answer only led to more uncertainties. The tension in her life, once just a ripple, now felt like an impending storm ready to crash. But what Kelly didn't realize was that someone else, someone closely connected to her, was now about to be pulled into this tangled mess, and their involvement would only complicate the mystery further. Her brother, Jake, who had always been her rock, had been growing more distant over the past few weeks. He had sensed Kelly's unease, but unlike Jenna, who seemed to veer into shady territory, Jake was someone Kelly believed she could trust without question. They'd grown up together, shared childhood memories, and had always been there for each other, no matter what. However, when Kelly called him to confide about her latest discovery, the photograph, the suspicious behavior from Emily, she was stunned by his response. Rather than offering the comforting, protective reassurance she expected, Jake sounded cold, almost dismissive. "You're reading too much into this, Kelly. Maybe it's time to drop it," he said, his voice distant flat. For a moment, Kelly couldn't believe what she was hearing. Jake had never been one to shut her down, especially when she was on the verge of uncovering something important. But what really rattled her came later that night, when she received an anonymous package at her doorstep. It was small, unmarked, and wrapped in a simple brown envelope, just like the kind used for legal documents. Inside, she found an envelope with a letter scrawled in handwriting she didn't recognize, but the message was clear. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." There were no threats of violence, no specifics. Just a chilling ultimatum. Her heart raced as she read the words again, each one weighing heavier than the last. But the most unsettling part wasn't the message itself. It was the fact that the letter contained a second photograph, one that showed her brother, Jake, with the very same man from the earlier photo with Tom. The timestamp on the photo indicated it was taken the same year, around the same time Kelly had met Tom. How could this be? Kelly's mind reeled with confusion. The fact that someone had sent her this new photograph, linking Jake to the very man who seemed to be at the center of everything, made her question everything she thought she knew. Was her brother involved in this mysterious web? Had he known all along? She had never suspected him. How could she? Jake had been her protector, the one person she could always rely on. The idea that he might be keeping secrets from her, just as Tom was, felt like a betrayal too heavy to bear. And then there was another twist. Kelly, still trying to process the implications of the photograph, found herself facing an unexpected encounter the following morning. She had just finished meeting with her lawyer, hoping to gain some legal insight into her situation when the receptionist handed her a voicemail that had just come in. It was from a private investigator she had hired a week earlier, someone who had been tracking down any leads on Tom's past. The investigator's voice was shaky, urgent. "Kelly, I don't know who's behind this, but I've found something that could change everything. You need to meet me at the location I'm sending you now. I can't talk over the phone, but it's important. Don't trust anyone right now. Not even Jake." The voicemail ended abruptly, and Kelly's phone buzzed a moment later with a text from the investigator. "Here's the address." As Kelly stared at the screen, she felt the air grow thick with uncertainty. Her instincts screamed at her to go, to follow this lead wherever it might take her, but a deep unease gnawed at her. Who could she trust now? Was Jake involved, as the photograph suggested, or was someone trying to manipulate her perception? The fact that the investigator had warned her to be cautious of Jake made her stomach churn. Had her brother really been hiding something all along? Was he in on whatever twisted game was unfolding, or had someone planted that photograph to make her believe he was? As she made her way to the address, Kelly's mind raced through all the possible scenarios. She considered the cryptic clues, the photographs, and the odd behaviors of those around her. Every moment felt like a test, every interaction filled with hidden meaning. When she finally reached the location, a small, unassuming office building in the middle of town, she could feel her pulse quicken. It wasn't just a matter of finding out the truth about the baby's father anymore. This had become a much larger puzzle, one that was unraveling her entire world. Inside, the investigator was waiting for her, looking more disheveled than she remembered. His eyes darted nervously as he ushered her into the dimly lit room. "Listen, Kelly," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is bigger than we thought. The person behind this is connected to people you know. They've been pulling strings, controlling things from the shadows. I've traced a connection between your brother, Tom, and a man named Nathan Holt. He's the one who's been orchestrating everything from the beginning." Kelly's heart skipped a beat. Nathan Holt. The name was unfamiliar, but the sense of danger was real. But before she could ask anything more, the investigator looked over his shoulder, as if something was behind him, watching. His face twisted with panic. "You need to leave. Now. You're not safe here." Without another word, he grabbed the folder from his desk and stuffed it into her hands, shoving her out the door just as fast as he could. "Don't trust anyone," he repeated, his voice shaking with fear. Standing in the hallway, Kelly was left with nothing but a file full of documents and a heart full of unanswered questions. Nathan Holt, a name she'd never heard before, but one that was now at the center of everything. Who was he, and what role did he play in all of this? As the puzzle pieces began to multiply, Kelly couldn't help but feel that she was being pushed towards something she wasn't ready to uncover. But there was no turning back now. The deeper she dug, the more tangled the threads became, and now, even those she thought she could trust were wrapped up in this web of deceit. What was the truth behind Nathan Holt? What was his connection to Tom, to Jake, and to the mysterious events that were closing in on Kelly? The answers felt just out of reach, and yet, with every step forward, the stakes grew higher. One thing was certain: Kelly had entered a game that was far more dangerous than she ever could have imagined. Kelly barely made it back to her car before her hands started trembling uncontrollably. She locked the doors as if someone was already chasing her, her eyes flickering across the street, watching every car, every shadow, every stranger who looked just a little too interested in her presence. The folder from the investigator sat heavy in her lap like a loaded weapon, packed with truths she hadn't yet read but could already feel burning holes into her reality. It was no longer just about uncovering the baby's father. This was bigger, darker, and her instincts were screaming that someone wanted to keep these secrets buried deep. But she wasn't prepared for what was about to happen next, a moment so jarring, so violently out of place, it ripped the ground out from under her. She drove home in silence, not daring to call anyone, not even her mother, not even Jake. Every ring of her phone felt like a trap, every text message a test. As she pulled into her driveway, she saw something that made her chest tighten like a vice. Her front door was open. Just slightly. Just enough. The air felt still, like the calm before a storm. She didn't remember leaving it open. Her mind raced. Could someone be inside? Was it a warning? She stayed in the car for what felt like hours, then finally summoned the courage to step out, keeping her keys between her fingers like a makeshift weapon. When she stepped into the house, she noticed nothing was stolen, nothing broken, just one thing changed. The envelope from the mysterious package that had held the threatening message was gone. Not moved. Gone. As if someone had come back to erase their presence, to clean up after themselves. And then came the worst part. She tried calling the investigator who had given her the folder. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. Over and over, nothing. Panic crept into her throat like a slow-burning fire. This wasn't just silence. This was absence. She dialed the number for his office. Disconnected. Then she called a mutual contact who had helped her get in touch with him in the first place. "I don't know what you're talking about," the woman said coldly. "There's no one by that name here. Never has been." Kelly's stomach dropped. Her voice cracked as she tried to explain, but the woman hung up. Just like that, the trail vanished. And suddenly, she felt it. She wasn't just being watched. She was being erased, isolated, stripped of resources like someone was slowly pulling the rug from under her while she still stood on it. That night, sleep didn't come. Her mind twisted through every possible outcome, every version of reality that could explain what was happening. What if Nathan Holt wasn't just a name, but part of something far more dangerous, maybe even criminal? What if Tom and Jake weren't the only ones caught in it, but were being used, manipulated like she was? What if the baby, her baby, was connected to something she couldn't even begin to understand? She found herself staring at the sonogram photo taped to the refrigerator, feeling more alone than ever before. The innocence of that image, a tiny life full of hope, now felt like it existed under a shadow she couldn't protect it from. The next morning delivered a punch she didn't see coming. Emily, her closest friend and confidant, someone who had helped her through every step of the pregnancy, stopped answering texts. That in itself wasn't unusual. Emily had a busy job, long shifts, but when Kelly decided to drop by her apartment, she found the door ajar, lights off, curtains drawn. No signs of forced entry. No signs of a struggle. Just silence. Her car was still in the lot. Her phone was going straight to voicemail. It was as if Emily had simply disappeared. Kelly called the police, trying to mask her panic under the guise of concern, but without signs of foul play, there wasn't much they could do. Adults disappear all the time, the officer said, and that line stuck with her like glass in her skin. Kelly knew Emily hadn't just left. Someone had made her disappear. Whether it was to send a message or because she had stumbled onto the same truths Kelly was uncovering, she couldn't be sure. All she knew was that the list of people she could trust was shrinking fast. With her heart pounding and fear clawing at the edges of her thoughts, Kelly tore open the folder the investigator had given her. Inside were documents, scans of adoption records, encrypted financial transactions, and a trail of aliases, one of which belonged to Nathan Holt. One alias stood out among the rest, a false identity that had been used to visit the same OB/GYN office where Kelly had her checkup. Her skin went cold. Someone had been there, possibly watching her without her ever knowing. She felt the world shift around her again. Was this about the baby itself? Could the pregnancy somehow be linked to something larger, an experiment, a cover-up, a revenge plot? Her thoughts spiraled. She felt eyes in every corner of the room. Every creak in the walls made her flinch. The paranoia was no longer irrational, it was survival. And the kicker? A new envelope slid under her front door, just as the sun began to set. No return address. No markings. Inside, one sentence scrawled in the same handwriting as the first letter. "We warned you." The story had gone from unsettling to life-threatening. Kelly no longer cared about uncovering just the identity of the baby's father. She needed to know why someone would go to these lengths to keep it hidden and what she was really carrying. Her past was collapsing under the weight of lies she didn't understand yet, her future teetering on the edge of something too terrifying to name. She felt like she was being hunted. Or worse, like she was already caught in someone else's trap. And just when she thought the spiral couldn't twist any further, her phone buzzed. A video message. No sender ID. She opened it with shaking hands and froze. It was grainy footage, clearly taken in secret. The angle was low, hidden. It showed her brother Jake, standing outside the very same building where the investigator had vanished. He was talking to someone. She couldn't see their face. But then Jake looked around nervously, reached into his coat, and handed the other person something small, folded, and familiar-looking. The screen went black. Kelly's scream never came. Her voice was trapped inside her. What had she just seen? Why was Jake there, and what had he given them? The questions didn't stop, and the answers felt further away than ever. She wasn't just chasing the truth anymore. The truth was chasing her. Kelly sat in her car outside the city library, the folder of documents still clutched in her lap, her phone turned off for the first time in days. She didn't feel safe anywhere anymore, not in her home, not at the doctor's office, not even walking in broad daylight. The world had taken on a warped, unfamiliar quality where every smile looked fake and every voice held suspicion. Her trust had been stripped away piece by piece. Still, something deep inside her refused to stop digging. Her instincts told her the final piece was close, like a word you can almost remember, but can't quite say aloud. She needed to follow the documents. There was one name that had appeared repeatedly in the files the investigator had given her, though always misspelled or buried in coded entries. Samantha Holt. A name that made her pause, though she couldn't say why. She'd brushed it off before as a distant relative of Nathan, maybe a cover identity, maybe nothing. But now, with everything crumbling, it demanded a second look. She found herself walking through the archive section of the library, chasing digital footprints and old paper trails. Her eyes burned as she scoured records, public databases, property files, until she landed on something that nearly stopped her heart. A photo from 12 years ago. A woman listed as Samantha Holt, smiling outside a courthouse. The date matched the adoption file tucked in the investigator's folder. But it wasn't the woman's face that froze her. It was the man standing beside her, his arm gently wrapped around her shoulders, looking younger, thinner, but unmistakably familiar. It was her father, not the man who raised her. The man she'd never known. The man her mother had told her walked out when she was a baby. That man. The ghost of her past, standing right there in the photo next to Samantha Holt.
Smiling. Alive. Involved.
Kelly's stomach turned. Why had her mother lied about him disappearing? Why had his name never come up before in any of this? And what was he doing connected to someone tied so closely to the name Nathan Holt? The realization slammed into her with terrifying clarity. What if the story she'd been told her whole life, that her father had left them and was never seen again, was just another carefully constructed lie? What if her father had never left at all, but instead gone underground, changed his identity, built a life in the shadows tied to the very people now haunting her? The betrayal cut deeper than anything else. This wasn't just a man running from fatherhood. This was someone who had possibly orchestrated the very chaos unraveling her life now. She staggered out of the library, gasping for air, clutching the printed photo in her fist like a lifeline. As she walked to her car, the world around her blurred, but her focus sharpened on one thing. She needed to confront her mother. The woman who had always said she was protecting her. The woman who had gone out of her way to shield Kelly from her father's abandonment. But now, that entire story felt manufactured. She didn't even wait for pleasantries when she barged through the front door. Her mother looked up from the kitchen, startled, but before she could speak, Kelly slammed the photo on the table. "What is this?" she demanded, voice trembling not with fear anymore, but fury. Her mother went pale. The color drained from her face in a single breath, and her hands began to tremble. "You weren't supposed to find that," she whispered. That sentence detonated everything. Kelly stared at her mother, her mind spinning. "You knew," she said slowly. "You knew he was alive. You knew he was involved with them." "I didn't know everything," her mother replied, the tears already forming. "Only enough to know that if you ever got too close, it would destroy you." Kelly shook her head, refusing to let emotion cloud her vision. "He's behind this, isn't he? The letters, the threats. This baby, it's not just about who the father is. It's about what this baby represents. A connection to him." Her mother collapsed into a chair, as if the weight of the secret had finally crushed her. "It started long before you, Kelly. Your father was part of a government-funded genetics program. He was brilliant, but reckless. When things started to go wrong, people disappeared, names were changed, files erased. I thought if I ran, if I raised you far from that world, you'd be safe."
Kelly's chest heaved.
Her mind felt like it was tearing in half. "So you lied to me my entire life to protect a man who faked his death and kept manipulating things from behind the curtain?" "I lied," her mother said quietly, "because your father isn't the only one watching you." That's when the final twist dropped like a trapdoor under her feet. Her mother reached into a drawer and pulled out a small device, no bigger than a thumb drive. "This is what they want," she said, placing it on the table. "It has the data they've been trying to retrieve for years. DNA sequences, identities, formulas. I stole it from your father before I left. I've been hiding it ever since. And now, somehow, you're carrying the one thing that connects it all together." Kelly stared at the device, then at her mother, then at her own stomach. The baby, the checkup, the strange blood work. It wasn't about Nathan Holt.
It was never about him.
The real mystery was far deeper, far more dangerous. This wasn't just about identity. This was about legacy. One buried beneath decades of lies, betrayal, and scientific ambition gone too far. Everything she thought she knew had just shattered. And someone out there knew that she finally had the truth in her hands. But now the real question wasn't who the father was. It was, how far would someone go to stop her from telling the world? Kelly didn't sleep that night. She sat in her car for hours, the stolen data device resting on the dashboard beneath the faint glow of the streetlight, her mother's confession replaying in her head like a scratched record. Everything felt like it had spiraled into a place she couldn't crawl out of. Her father, who wasn't dead, who wasn't gone, had buried himself inside a program so classified that even whispers of it carried consequences. The device her mother had hidden was no ordinary flash drive. It was evidence, proof of a long-dead experiment, a child that was never supposed to exist, and a truth that was never meant to see daylight. And now, somehow, all of it was tied to the baby inside her. But what crushed her more than fear was the unbearable weight of betrayal. Her mother, the one person she believed she could trust completely, had made decisions for her entire life. Now Kelly was left to deal with the fallout, and she had to do it alone. Or so she thought. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, she met Michael in a crowded diner on the edge of town. He looked exhausted too, dark circles under his eyes and an expression she couldn't quite read. She hadn't seen him since the day he'd helped her track down the medical records, before things had turned dark and dangerous. She didn't know what to expect anymore, who to trust who might be hiding more. But when he sat across from her and glanced at the device she laid on the table, something changed in his face. He wasn't just shocked. He looked terrified. "I didn't think it was real," he said quietly, leaning in. "I heard rumors long ago, before I left DC Black projects, unauthorized trials, synthetic markers. I thought it was all noise until now." Kelly locked eyes with him. "I need to know the truth, Michael. All of it. No more secrets." He hesitated, then took a breath. "If this is what I think it is, that baby inside you isn't just a child. It's part of something bigger. Your father was one of the top scientists working on genetic predictive modeling, modifying traits before conception, splicing DNA, with targeted outcomes. The program was shut down because subjects started developing complications. Ethical lines were crossed. Files went missing. But there were rumors that at least one subject survived." Kelly's stomach turned. "You're saying I was the experiment?" Michael shook his head. "Not you. But someone close to you. Maybe the baby. Maybe your father planned this all along. Maybe he's using you to restart what was buried." Just then, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, checked the screen, then showed it to Kelly. A message with no number. Just coordinates, and a simple line of text. "Return what was taken, or she disappears." Kelly's pulse slammed through her chest as she stared at the screen. "Who's she?" she asked, but her gut already knew. She turned toward the window, her heart falling through her ribs. "My mom." The choice hit her like a freight train. If she turned over the drive, she might save her mother, but lose the only evidence connecting this entire nightmare. If she didn't, she might lose the only family she had left. It was the kind of impossible decision that cracked people wide open. Truth or safety? Family or justice? Every path forward was a sacrifice. Michael leaned closer, whispering low. "We can try to trade the drive for her, then double back and expose them." But Kelly had stopped trusting simple plans. Too many people had lied. Too many things hadn't added up. And there was something else gnawing at her, the feeling that this wasn't just about her family. If this drive got into the wrong hands, it wouldn't just change her life. It could unravel national security, reopen dangerous research, or worse, restart a program that should have been buried forever. As she sat there in the booth, cradling her swollen stomach, her breath caught with the weight of everything pressing in. She was no longer just protecting herself. She was protecting a future, one that could be rewritten or erased with a single wrong move. And just when she thought things couldn't get worse, the waitress walked over and handed her a folded note. "Guy at the counter said this was for you." Kelly unfolded the paper slowly. Her hands trembled as she read the words. "I'm watching both of you. Choose wisely. We know where you'll go next, and own aim." No signature. Just confirmation of her deepest fear. This wasn't over. It wasn't even close. And someone, somewhere, was always one step ahead. The ride to the drop-off point was silent. The city lights blurred past the windows as Kelly gripped the data drive so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every breath felt heavier, like the air itself was warning her to turn around. Michael sat beside her, eyes fixed on the GPS, jaw clenched, saying nothing. He had offered to help, but even now, she wasn't sure where his loyalty really lay. Ever since that anonymous message at the diner, she hadn't felt safe. Not in her home, not on the road, not even with the one person who had seemed like an ally. The world had shifted under her feet, and now every shadow felt like a trap, every movement a potential ambush. The truth wasn't just dangerous, it was spreading. As they neared the location, an abandoned warehouse at the edge of an old industrial park, Kelly's phone vibrated in her coat pocket. She didn't recognize the number, but something made her answer. On the other end, a voice, low, female, calm. "You're not the only one they're watching. Look around." The line went dead. Kelly's heart dropped as she slowly turned in her seat and noticed a black SUV idling across the street. Another one behind them. And then another to the right. 3 vehicles. No lights, no movement. Just watching. She and Michael weren't just being followed. They were being herded. Suddenly, everything clicked into place like a horrifying puzzle. This wasn't just about her baby. It wasn't even just about the experiment. It was about control. Influence. A program that never really ended. Kelly realized her pregnancy had activated something, some protocol, some buried initiative, and now she was the center of it all. But what shattered her more than anything else was the truth that had been dancing at the edges of her mind ever since this all began. Someone had to have given them her location. Someone who knew every step she'd taken. Someone close. She pulled over before reaching the warehouse, slammed the car into park, and turned toward Michael, her voice sharp and raw. "How did they know where we were going?" He didn't answer at first, just stared ahead with the same tight expression. Then he sighed, slow, defeated, and pulled out his phone. "I didn't want you to get hurt," he said quietly. "They told me if I helped them keep tabs on you, no one else would get involved. No one else would get hurt. I thought I could control it, Kelly." Her whole body froze. It was worse than a betrayal. It was confirmation that she had been used. From the moment he stepped into her life again, Michael had been part of this. Whether he meant to protect her or not, he had fed the machine she was trying to escape. Her trust had been a weapon against her, and now there was no one left on her side. She opened the door, stepping out into the night air, clutching the drive in one hand while her other protectively held her belly. The black SUVs revved to life as soon as her feet hit the pavement. Headlights blazed on. Doors opened. Men in dark jackets stepped out with earpieces, not speaking, not rushing, just approaching steadily, like they already knew she wasn't going to run. Like they had already won. But Kelly wasn't done yet.
She ran.
Not toward the warehouse. Not toward the road. She sprinted into the alley behind them, heart pounding, lungs on fire. She could hear shouting behind her, the pounding of boots hitting pavement, but adrenaline surged through her like a second heartbeat. Every twist and turn of the alley felt like a countdown. Every door she passed, every fence she climbed, was a prayer. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of a bridge that overlooked the city's forgotten freight yard. There, panting, surrounded by the echoes of distant sirens, she spotted her out, an old service hatch leading into the underground tunnels once used for train maintenance. She climbed down, disappearing into the dark just as the agents reached the top of the stairs. Inside the tunnels, she finally stopped, hands bracing against the damp walls, the cold air wrapping around her like a second skin. She pulled out the drive again, staring at it in the dim light. It wasn't just her secret anymore. It wasn't even just her father's. This was about control on a global scale. If this technology, this research, could predetermine a child's intelligence, obedience, emotion, or even political leanings, then whoever controlled it wouldn't just shape a generation. They would shape the future of humanity. And now, she realized with chilling clarity, there were others like her. Other pregnancies. Other women, other babies carrying modified blueprints, all part of something too massive for the public to even imagine. That's when her phone vibrated again. One new message. A video file. She tapped it, and the screen lit up with a grainy recording. A sterile hospital room. A woman screaming. Medical staff scrambling. The camera panned slightly, revealing a familiar face, one she hadn't seen in decades. Her father, standing at the bedside, smiling. Then the voice came from the screen, unmistakable. Subject delivered. Viable. Sequence intact. Initiate next phase. The date stamp? Exactly 9 months before her own birth. And everything she thought she knew shattered in an instant. The dim glow of the laptop screen illuminated Kelly's face as she sat in the shadows of the abandoned train tunnel, the weight of the USB drive pressing heavily in her palm. The video she had just watched, a grainy recording of her own birth, orchestrated by a father she believed long dead, played on a relentless loop in her mind. The revelation was staggering. Her existence was not a mere twist of fate, but the result of a clandestine experiment, a calculated move in a game she had only begun to comprehend. A sudden noise echoed through the tunnel, snapping Kelly back to the present. Footsteps. Measured, deliberate, drawing closer. She extinguished the laptop screen and pressed herself against a cold, damp wall, her breath shallow and silent. From the shadows emerged a figure she recognized all too well, Michael. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, illuminated sporadically by the flickering overhead lights. "Kelly," he began, his voice a mixture of urgency and regret. "I know you're here. We need to talk." She remained silent, her mind racing. Trust had become a scarce commodity, and Michael's earlier betrayal was still a fresh wound. Yet, the depth of the conspiracy she was entangled in left her with few allies. After a tense pause, she stepped into the dim light, her eyes locked onto his. "Talk," she said, her tone devoid of warmth. "Blog." Janice Hardy, calm. Michael took a cautious step closer, hands raised in a placating gesture. "I know I betrayed your trust, and I can't undo that. But there's more at play here than either of us realized. After you disappeared, I started digging deeper. This project, it's not just about you or your father. It's a global initiative, spanning decades. You're one of many, Kelly." The ground seemed to shift beneath her. "One of many," she echoed, the words tasting foreign and bitter. He nodded. "Children born under this program have been strategically placed in various sectors, government, corporations, research institutions. All of them, like you, engineered for specific purposes. But you're different. Your father ensured you had free will, the ability to choose your own path. That's why they're after you. You're an anomaly in their system." The pieces began to align in Kelly's mind, forming a picture more terrifying than she had imagined. Her child was not just a person but a potential pawn in a game of power and control. Masterclass. Before she could respond, the tunnel was flooded with blinding light. A voice echoed, amplified and authoritative. "Kelly Monroe, surrender the drive and come with us. Resistance is futile." Michael's eyes widened in panic. "They've found us. We need to move, now." Heart pounding, Kelly turned to flee, but the tunnel's exits were blocked by imposing figures in tactical gear. Trapped. Desperation surged within her, but she forced herself to remain calm. She glanced at Michael, whose face mirrored her fear. Drawing a deep breath, she stepped forward, holding the USB drive aloft. "You want this?" she called out, her voice echoing. "Let my mother go, unharmed, and I'll cooperate." A tense silence followed. Then, from the ranks of their pursuers, a figure emerged that made Kelly's blood run cold. It was her father. Alive, authoritative, and very much in control. "Kelly," he said, his tone a blend of paternal warmth and cold command, "you've done well to come this far. But this is bigger than you can comprehend. Hand over the drive, and let's end this." Emotions warred within her, betrayal, longing, confusion. "You are dead," she whispered, more to herself than to him. He shook his head. "I had to disappear, for the greater good. Everything I've done has been for that purpose." Michael leaned in, whispering urgently, "He's manipulating you. Remember, you're the anomaly. You have the power to choose." Tears blurred Kelly's vision as she looked at the man who had given her life and then seemingly abandoned it. The weight of generations, of engineered destinies, pressed down on her. But amidst the chaos, a clarity emerged. She had something they couldn't control, her autonomy. With a resolve she hadn't known she possessed, Kelly met her father's gaze. "No," she said firmly, gripping the USB drive. "This ends now." A flicker of something, respect? Sadness, crossed his face. "So be it," he murmured, signaling to the operatives. As they closed in, Kelly felt a surge of determination. She might be one of many, but she was uniquely herself. And she would fight, not just for her own freedom, but for the future of her child, and for all those unknowingly ensnared in this web of control. The morning light broke softly over the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the still sleeping city. Kelly stood alone on the rooftop of an old government building, the same place her father had once taken a photo of her when she was just a child, unaware that her life had been designed long before she ever had a say in it. Now, the events of the past few weeks played like a fever dream in her mind. Coded files, whispered betrayals, the haunting revelation of her true origins, and the final confrontation with the man who created her not just as a daughter, but as an instrument in a global system of control. She had exposed their operation to the world, releasing the contents of the USB drive in a live broadcast that couldn't be scrubbed from the internet. YouTube searches exploded overnight with clips of the leaked footage, interviews, and analysis videos asking, "Who is Kelly Monroe really?" and "Secret children of the elite. Conspiracy or truth?" The internet had taken hold of the story, but for Kelly, the aftermath wasn't about going viral. It was about reclaiming her identity in a world that had treated her like a product. The fall of the organization was swift and surgical. Law enforcement raids happened in the shadows of headlines that downplayed their true scale. Names were redacted. Trials were sealed. But she knew the truth. She had cracked something open that wouldn't be easy to close again. The revelation that engineered children had been seeded into the fabric of society lit a fire in millions, from Reddit threads and TikTok breakdowns to long-form YouTube documentaries asking whether our reality was more curated than we dared to believe. Kelly wasn't looking for fame, but she couldn't avoid becoming the symbol of a movement, one that asked hard questions about autonomy, manipulation, and the illusion of choice. Her name trended constantly, often accompanied by hashtags like #UnplugTheSystem and #KellyMonroeFiles. Yet despite all the noise, what haunted her most were the silences of friends lost, of questions unanswered, of a childhood built on lies. Michael had survived, though barely. He'd taken a bullet meant for her during their escape and now lived off-grid, recovering from wounds both physical and emotional. They spoke only in encrypted messages, a few words here and there, but the bond between them had changed. It was no longer about trust, it was about survival. Her mother, once thought dead, had been freed during the chaos and now lived in witness protection, under a name that Kelly would never know. Their reunion had been brief, tearful, and more complex than any movie script could capture. Years of separation, trauma, and forced silence couldn't be undone in a single moment, but they had begun the slow work of healing. Still, part of Kelly could never shake the sense that someone somewhere was still watching. She'd spot a familiar shadow in a crowded market, a car parked just a little too long outside her apartment. Nothing concrete, but enough to keep her cautious. Then one day, a package arrived. No return address, no note, just a weathered photograph. In it, she stood as a child in a lab, surrounded by other children with the same distant look in their eyes. On the back, a message scrawled in her father's handwriting. "We're not done." Her heart pounded as she held the image, a mixture of dread and clarity rushing through her. The world believed the story was over, that the villain had been unmasked, the data leaked, the conspiracy unraveled. But for Kelly, the ending was never that simple. The truth wasn't just in the files or the faces. It was in the choices she made every day to live on her own terms. The system hadn't broken her. It had made her more human than the architects of it ever anticipated. And though she didn't know what came next, she finally understood that sometimes peace doesn't come from resolution. It comes from embracing the unknown. As the wind caught the edge of the photograph and lifted it from her fingers, she watched it flutter away into the city skyline, swallowed by the same uncertain world that had once defined her fate. Kelly turned away, not because she was done searching for answers, but because for the first time, she was walking forward on her own terms. And somewhere, in the shifting currents of trending searches and digital noise, her story continued, not as a myth or mystery, but as a reminder that the most dangerous secrets are the ones we're not ready to face.